Hello and welcome back to the Aussie Football Passport. And we have some good news. Australia have qualified for the round of 32 at the World Cup. It is a wonderful Friday evening as we record this. And I've got Adam and Scott from the Brisbane Football Review. How are you, Scott?
I'm great, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you. And no doubt it's the same for you, Adam.
Yeah, very good. Relieved that Australia through to the knockout rounds. So the first part of the mission has been accomplished.
Yes, indeed. Very, very good news to bring you today. While I've got you, Adam, can you plug your wonderful podcast, the Brisbane Football Review?
Yep, you can find us on Facebook at The Raw Review or Brisbane Football Review, on Twitter at BNE Football. You can find us on Instagram and Threads, Brisbane Football Review, all lowercase. Or you can drop us an email, Brisbane Football Review at gmail.com. And you can find us on podcast platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever all a good podcast can be found.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Adam. Appreciate that. Let's get into the football. A nil-all draw with Paraguay is what secured our pathway to the round of 32. And it wasn't a very memorable game, let's say, but it was a professional result in terms of getting the job done with a compact defense and against a sturdy Paraguay side. I think both sides probably, fair to say, came out and played for the draw. Do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I can't imagine the neutrals watching this game would have had too much enjoyment because it wasn't the most free flowing of games, as you point out. But with a vested interest in it, it was certainly a bit of a nervy 90 minutes with the very high stakes on the line. And as you said, I think both sides were very risk averse here. You look at the two lineups, both sides playing with three central defenders, so there were a lot of defensive players out there on the field, which did show you the intent of both sides here, that it was going to be they will try and prod each other and maybe try and create an opening or two. And I think Australia were better at that than Paraguay were. But I think, as you said, both sides were pretty content to take the point in this game, and that's very much the way it's set out in the game and the way the game panned out as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, Paraguay also had their star man, if you like, in Miguel Almiron on the sideline with that suspension from the game against Turkey in the previous group game. So no doubt that probably added an extra layer of that defensive resilience, shall we say, or park the bus to their game plan. And I guess to that point, Adam, we made 6 changes as well. So Popper rang them through, and particularly the news that Jacob Italiano got injured meant that the right wing back slot freed up. Were you surprised that he went with Jordan Boss, or I guess Aziz Behich coming in and Jordan Boss sliding over to the right hand side?
No, I'm not surprised by that. I think Jordy Boss has sort of proven he can probably play effectively on both sides of in those fullback roles, and I think as its age, I think is for more custom solely as a left back. But yeah, maybe a little bit surprised. Thought maybe it might have gone on Nils Stegenek, but I think as well that just to try and sort of really lock it down and sort of not really take it out. I think with both sides, I think the from the outset it was a case of at very worst, do not lose. I think at the end of the day, and I don't think there was much ambition or risk taken, knowing full well that if it does remain a draw, that both teams will more than likely go through. Socceroos guaranteed to go through at this point, and Paraguay probably with 4 points as it is sort of panning out right now. Also, probably enough to finish in the best 8 third place finishes.
It was a bit of a shock, though, Alex, wasn't it? I don't think too many people thought that he would move Geordie Boss from the left-hand side to the right, but from an attacking point of view, it certainly made an impact because his ability to get forward and cut in onto his left foot was probably one of Australia's better attacking outlets in the game, and also gave you that experience with Aziz Badge on that other side. And I think when you look at the alternatives of players like a Kai True and a Jason Geria, Milos Stegenek, I would think Tony Popovich might have been a little bit worried about them in those wide areas. We saw Kai Truin in the game against Mexico, in particular, struggle a little bit in that right wing back role. So it was probably a case of put a player out there who's familiar in that level of football as his Behich, and then move Geordie Boss to that other side. And there's 8 days off now. I wonder if that might be something they persist with because Geordie Boss was really impressive in that right wing back role. Italiano's been good, but Boss looked a real threat, and his combination with Volpato was interesting to say the least. So I wonder if they stick with that, Alex.
Yeah, Scott, you must have read my mind because I was just about to make the point that I thought the move of Jordan Boss to the right wing back role really unlocked him. You know, for me personally, we know how talented this young man is, absolute weapon on the left, but he looked, I don't know if subdued is the right word, but he was maybe pinned back, particularly in the game against the US, by their winger. I think Serginho Dest was on his side from memory, and he really sort of pinned him back with his pace. So fair enough. Even in the first game against Turkey, though, he sort of was pinned back maybe by their attacking threats, but shifting him over to the right, which is where a lot of our attack went in the first two games as well, to be honest, really seemed to unlock him. And that combination with Volpato, wow, that's looking pretty good. And yeah, look, I wouldn't be surprised if Popper sticks with it. I guess a lot of it will depend on the injury to Jacob Italiano. It's an adductor injury, I believe. So no timeline on that has been given, but given it's an adductor, you wouldn't imagine that 8 days or I guess it'll be a few more that will be enough time for him to recover. So we'll have to wait and see. The other changes, I guess, Jackson Irvine in midfield, Volpato started. So two very good ones, but a one close to your heart, Adam, Lucas Harrington playing at centre back. What did you make of his performance?
Look, there's a clean sheet, so you can't really complain about that. But yeah, Lucas Harrington's a couple of first, comes the I should say first, the youngest Socceroo to start at a World Cup finals match. So congratulations to him, another milestone record for him. But look, he didn't look out of place at all. And again, that solid three Harry Sutar and Alessandro Cicciati, I think it looked very good. And again, we did say, and it was on show for a lot, that Harrington's sort of range of passing as well, perhaps is probably a bit superior to a Jason Guerrier or a Cam Burgess. Like I said, both those players have different skills, but certainly a game where you're trying to control the outcome and obviously not, and sort of at least sort of lock it down. But I think having that passing sort of depth, length and depth, I think is probably what gave him the nod. So glad to see him get a start. I think obviously that will, from a clubland point of view, that just probably will now increase his value somewhat as well. Now that he is a World Cup starting player. So, but all in all, again, simple fact, it was a clean sheet, and that's what defenders play for.
Exactly right. Yeah, he looked so composed. He looked like, you know, it was his second or third World Cup. The way he played, to be honest. So I was really impressed with him, and we've seen him
Paraguay
just
went
come
at him
on.
as well, didn't they? In the early part of
Yeah,
the game,
they
all of
did.
their longer to balls direct were towards his side of the field, so they clearly felt he was the weak point in the Australian backline. And as he's shown time and time again, he certainly is. And I won't recap what Adam said, but I will say there weren't too many American cheers on Thursday night in the United States, but the few that might have been there probably came from the Denver area because they would add another zero to the transfer fee, I think.
Yeah, definitely. He was. He
Espe-
definitely.
Especially now they get 100% of the transfer
Yes.
fee. So,
Some
yes,
nice
they would.
magic
Yeah.
beans coming the way of Brisbane, but that's a story for a different show.
Hmm.
Yeah, and just quickly, of course, Brisbane Raw sold their sell-on rights to Colorado for a quick buck, but in fact, they are going to miss out on a significant chunk of the fee that he will get, no doubt, in the next month or so when a big club comes in and signs him, as we all believe. Now, in terms of Connor Metcalf, I wanted to have a quick chat about him, gentlemen. I might throw this on to you, Scott, early. Don't know if you agree with my quick take on this, but Connor Metcalf, didn't really get as involved as he did in the first game and even when he came on in the second half against the US. I mean, you could probably put that a little bit down to copping a boot in the face in the first 20 odd minutes. Perhaps it was that, but do you think it was just because he was playing on the left rather than the right, perhaps?
Well, the boots to the face certainly would have helped. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. It did look like a nasty run as well,
Mm,
completely accidental, but
yeah.
Mm.
no doubt it wouldn't have helped this game. I do agree. The ball was mostly going down the right hand side for Australia with Geordie Boss and Christian Volpato combining the way that they were. That did feel like, and also Nestoria and Kunda preferring that right hand side channel as well. That seemed to be the real focus of the attack. So it does mean that the players playing on the left hand side probably didn't see as much of an opportunity as those on the right hand side. So that's probably a bit of the quiet game for Connor Metcalf. He worked really hard though, and that's the one thing he does bring to the side. Even when he doesn't get the ball, you can see the work rate and the energy he does bring. And also, he's able to link the play. And there were a few passages of play there where he was really important in just getting Australia out of trouble. So, well, he wasn't involved in the front third the way we'd seen in the first two games. He played a really important role today in a game where Paraguay were trying to press in certain areas to try and get the ball back quickly, and he was able to quite nullify that for Australia. So not his most important game, but pretty good one nevertheless.
Yeah, definitely. He was a key cog in the game, but probably a little bit more behind the scenes rather than being the focal point as he was in the first two games. And speaking of midfielders, we saw the return of Jackson Irvine to the starting lineup. Adam, do you think that was the right call to bring him in for Ocon Engsler in this one?
I think it's more of a case of just I think either way, you're always going to get uh, a good outcome. I think look, while Ocon Engsler has been very very good, you can't substitute Jackson Irvine's sort of experience in that. When again in a game where probably the draw or at least not losing is probably just as vital as winning. I actually think that Jackson Irvine probably is probably a little bit more sort of that controlled defensive, whereas I think Ocon actually has shown that he has got a very, very good long ball and it's probably more of an attacking midfield weapon if you sort of say that coming out of sort of that number six role. So again, I think it's a little bit of horses for courses. I think it's more of a case of where that you could go for the known quantity in a game situation like that with the experience of Jackson Irvine. But again, I don't think it's a knock on Paul Okonengsla. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's a future midfield linchpin for the Socceroos going forward. I think it's just look, if you've got that experience, why not use it?
Yeah, horses for courses is the right term, Alex. When you look at it, the first couple of games, Australia was sitting a little bit deeper, and you need someone like Ocon Engsler to be able to pick the ball up and out of defence and play the ball third through the lines. In this game, Australia had more possession and territory, and he wanted someone to run in behind the defence. And that's where Jackson Irvine really excels, those runs into the area to try and get on the end of things. A little bit Tim Cahill-esque when he was more of a midfielder, and that's kind of the way they wanted him to play in this game. Look, the game will come for Paul Ocon to come back in, and it could be the next game against whoever it is in the round of 32. But I'll quickly talk about the midfield. Aidan O'Neill was brilliant in
Mm,
this game as well. He got
yes.
the official man of the match award, and his role in midfield is it really is it's look, you don't notice it, but if he's not there, you miss it. It's such a crucial role. It's a bit like the Vinnie Grella role where you never really noticed what he did, but when he wasn't there, you knew it. And this was the same case here. It was a really good performance in a game where there weren't too many standouts in terms of creativity and flair. It was the unsung players who shone, and he was certainly really impressive for Australia.
So that's a really good point, Scott. I think Aidan O'Neill has come on leaps and bounds in this Socceroos setup, and he might even be one of the first names on the team sheet, if you ask me, just because of that work. He knits everything together in terms of the defensive structure, but also the ability to play the first pass, whether it be to his midfield partner, if it's Ocon Engsler or Irvine, or outright, where he's happy to drop in just in front of the defenders to collect that ball under pressure. All really fantastic traits, and again, maybe another player. I know we talked off air about players. A lot of these Socceroos probably getting moves. He's probably another one that might have another. Hopefully, I hope another shot in Europe. Of course, he played a lot of his younger years in the lower leagues in England, so maybe they come back calling for him because this kind of midfielder is very much part of the modern game.
Like I said, the best number sixes are the ones that you just don't see the way just does work hard, and he fits that bill perfectly. And I think it's very very exciting as far as 2/3 of the midfield for the Socceroos in for the future, being Ocon Engsler and Aidan O'Neill. I think it's a very exciting sort of time. I think especially as well in that defensively as well, with Kachati and more than likely Harrington and if they say a few other sort of potential sort of centre backs, coming through. That at least it's one area that the Socceroos really, really look like that they've got a future mortgage on. So it's great to see them performing in 2026 because look out for the next couple of cycles.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you'd probably throw Hayden Matthews in there if he can get
Mm.
himself fit at Portsmouth. Really, really good player. Jordan Boss, of course, who we talked about, another player that potentially is going to get a nice big move after this World Cup. And and then look, there's some attackers out there as well that didn't make this squad that are probably not far away. Zach Sapsford really impressed in Scotland as well this season. I thought, scoring against both Celtic and Rangers pretty good, but it wasn't quite in the frame for the squad, unfortunately. Anyway, I digress. Speaking of forwards, though, and I'll throw this one to you, Scott. Aaron Kunda, he had a bit of a tough afternoon. I think it's fair to say he was, being asked to be those sort of hold up man a little bit,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really suit his profile. He's more someone to run in behind and have those through balls. And to be fair, Paraguay did do a good job of marking him, don't you think?
Yeah, they certainly did a good job of marking him. They knew he was a threat because every time he got the ball in and around the halfway line, there was a couple of players there really closing him down quickly. So they'd done their homework on the way that you can nullify him in terms of having his back to goal, not letting him run at them. And it's clear they were very quick on that front. And yeah, you're right. I think that we forecasted on the show, the last one of these we did that, but Iran Kunda is better in that role where the two behind the striker and play when having a Toure or a Yengi in the front role because he's just not physical enough or to be able to hold off elite level centre backs at this point in time. It's not his game. He can do it to an extent, but you're not going to get the best version of him in that role. So I think it was a case of here they used him in that role, knowing they're going to have the link up with Volpato and Boss and Metcalf on the other side. You could link up and play a particular way, and it worked okay, but against certain opposition, it doesn't really work. So I would like to see, and I imagine that the case would have been they were just giving Mo Toure a rest because of there is that issue with his calf potentially. So now he's got a week to rest that up. I don't think we'll see Nestri starting up front in the next game, but he can certainly do that job. I think we all agree we'd rather see him in the wide area running at players, and that's probably where we hope to see him going forward.
Yeah, definitely. A good point there, Scott. One that I was probably going to raise. But yeah, Mo Toure, I think in the best starting 11 for the Socceroos, you have Mo Toure and Nestor Irankunda both in there, just a dual threat of pace in behind. Different styles, of course. Mo Toure is a little bit more of a physical presence and can hold up the ball a little bit better than what Nestor can,
There's still
even
that
though
problem though, Alex, the 4 into 3, and it doesn't get any
it
easier because
does.
Volpato was so good today. It's hard to work out who you leave out.
Yeah, it does. And look, it's a fantastic headache to have for Popper. And again, it probably comes down to the horses for courses discussion we had with Jackson Irvine. And it will, of course, depend on the opposition who we play. But Adam, I guess the slow start wasn't such a case for the Socceroos this time around against Paraguay, which was good. But the second half sort of dropped off a little bit. Do you think that it was maybe a case of the fact that both sides knew that they needed only a draw to get through, and maybe that constitutes why the drop off, or is there something there that maybe Popovich will have to have a look at?
No, I think it was a case of a game situation. I think but once they survived, there was a flurry from about the 60th minute where Paraguay really sort of, I think it was almost their last gasp, sort of to try and really force the game. But once the Socceroos saw that out and changes started ringing in by Gustavo Alfaro, and then those changes were not really ones where they were trying to change the game. It was almost cycling through, but giving players rest. From there, I think that the sort of real fire out of the game really came out. So I look, you don't want to say no, it's not an issue because the Socceroos do want to feel strong. But I thought that probably the starting half an hour probably was the most important thing to take out of this game. That they didn't just rest on their laurels, or even worse, have to play from behind. So the fact that they got to the halftime nil, or probably the stronger of the two sides, I thought was probably a good departure from obviously the USA game where they were just completely outplayed in the first half. As I said, the second half, look, I'd say Paraguay may have just shaded it, but again, when you're not really pushing for the game, you're talking about you know you know 1 versus 0.9 as far as that comparison. There wasn't really much in it, and yeah, I think it was pretty clear for about 60 minutes on that unless something miraculous happened or some big stroke of absolute luck, the game was finishing nil all, and both teams were content with the point and the passage to the next round.
Yeah, I think you've nailed that, to be honest, Adam. Not much more to add to that, to be
I
honest.
was worried there was going to be a wicked deflection in that late shot that Patrick
Mm,
Beach had to save. I was genuinely worried that was going to
Yeah.
be a wicked deflection and a 1-0 moment.
yeah.
That's probably right, and then Ciso had a couple of late dribbles there that were a bit concerning, and knowing the Socceroos' history of not doing it the easy way, it did sort of, spark a couple of little flashbacks there, but we won't dwell on that too much. We don't wanna tell old war stories, do we? So, um, anyway, let's talk about potential opponents for the Socceroos, because we will be playing the second place team in Group G, which consists of Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, or Belgium. So those games are on at 1 p.m. tomorrow, Australian Eastern Time. So make sure you watch them if you want to do a bit of a scouting mission, and a potential Trans Tasman derby. That would be spicy, but it's a bit of a difficult one because New Zealand have to get a result against Belgium, don't they, Scott? So that's what are your thoughts there? Who do you think's going to be the Socceroos' opponents?
Give me two answers. I'll give you the short answer and the long answer. The short
All right.
answer is I don't care. The long answer is I don't care because all four of these sides have actually been pretty even over the first two games in the group, haven't they? I know that Egypt have the win, New Zealand have a loss, but really it was only the second half of that game where Egypt ran over the top of New Zealand. I think all four teams have been pretty even, and I think whichever way it does fall, the Socceroos should look at whoever they play. I think they can get through that matchup. There's no really dominant team here. There's some good players here. There's a Kevin De Bruyne at Belgium. There's a Mo Salah. You're well familiar with Alex at Egypt, but
Yeah.
there's there's no real team that you look at. It's not a France. It's not an Italy. There's not a Germany. Or an Argentina. The sort of teams we've run into in the knockout rounds before. So I feel like no matter who we play here out of those four, it's a matchup where we can go into the game with confidence that if we play well, we have every chance of getting out of the game. So I'm not worried which of those four it would be. I think if it's Egypt, Belgium, or Iran, we would globally be looked at as the underdog as always, which is where we've been used to. If it is somehow New Zealand, and look, fingers crossed it is not because I want to play them necessarily, but it'd be great for them to get their first win and get through. But if we were to play them, it'd be a different sort of scenario where we would actually be expected to win. So that would be interesting, but we'll have to see where it falls. And ultimately, I'll go back to what I said. I don't really care who we play because we're through.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point, and I just wanted to pick up on your point there, Scott, in terms of De Bruyne, Salah. Look, both getting on a bit. This is their last World Cup. Let's be honest. Mo Salah's had a pretty ordinary season at Liverpool with injuries and being thrown under the bus and that kind of thing. You've got Kevin De Bruyne, who's having a holiday in the Serie A because it's a second-rate league and a second-rate footballing nation in Italy, and then you've got Chris Wood, of
Second rate's
course.
generous.
Yeah, that is. I mean, look, sometimes I get called a charity. Um, New Zealand have Chris Wood, who's probably the most frightening out of a lot of them, and I mean, again, he's coming off a season that was very heavily disrupted by a knee injury, and only sort of worked his way back into Nottingham Forest starting side towards the back end of the season. So they're not the teams that, well, particularly Belgium, it's not the team that we once thought they were, particularly of that golden generation. But I guess to you, Adam, is there a side you've got your eye on here that you'd like to play, or are you on a similar thought process to Scott in terms of not really caring and there being four evenly matched sides?
Look, I agree with Scott in for most part, because yeah, I agree that whichever team does finish second should not hold any fears for the Socceroos. I can hear now that the Euro snobs are probably howling us, saying, "Oh, Belgium are a good side because they've got De Bruyne, they've got all these players that play in top European leagues and whatnot." Haven't we learned that lesson? That it's not about where these players play their football that matters. Because if that was the case, Turkey should absolutely thump the crap out of us. With Arda Güler playing for Real Madrid and Calvin Hagler playing for for Juventus and whatnot. So it's a case of you take it on sort of face value. And look, Belgium have been probably that's for the team that's highest ranked in that group. It's sort of been rather disappointing. But look, and this is the design. They've got players that can do it, but again, they're only you can only take what you can. Actually, the team that the Dark Horse are probably, if there's one team I don't want to probably play, is Iran. And I think that is, but there's also obviously we would love to play them. I'll tell you we don't want to play them because there isn't that star player, that really I haven't actually really done much research. I'm not sure Asmun Sada Asmun is probably, I'm not sure if he's even at the World Cup.
He was not picked for,
Oh wow.
now get this, he was pictured with the, president or one of the royal family members of the United Arab Emirates, and I don't think them and Iran get on, and
No.
therefore he didn't make the squad. So, yeah, anyway.
Well, that shows how much I know about Iranian footballers. That I like Sada Asmun's probably their star player. He's not even there,
Yeah.
and also as well all the geopolitical adversity as well, where they're going to have to travel on the day of the game into Dallas, which again you don't really want to profit from that. But this is also a $5 million game in real terms, so that'd be one. But also as well, it's also. But it also would make them very, very resolute and sort of very together as a team. On the other hand, I think that as Socceroos fans, I think we'd also like to play Iran to cash in some receipts from all the way back in 1997. So, and I think if there's any time to play Iran, now would be the time. But look, I was Scott, in so simple terms, I think whoever makes it through, I think the Socceroos should at least back themselves for beating Dallas.
If you thought the mainstream media coverage leading up to the US game was nauseating, being about one particular pundit, Alex, you wait until we draw Iran in the round of 32 and everyone replays that horror movie from the MCG in
Bother.
1997. Or New Zealand get through and it turns into a trans-Tasman showdown. You just wait. It'll be a interesting week ahead if either of those two happen to be the opponent.
If New Zealand do finish second, does that mean Football Australia have got to pay the freight for the soccer ashes to get from Oxford Street to Dallas in time for the game?
It's the last thing Football Australia need with that whopping debt that they've got, right?
You'll have to explain to FIFA what that is when it gets there too, by the way.
Yeah, and probably US Customs as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that thing?
Yeah. Just quickly, I wanted to do just a quick little, I guess, opinion on Belgium, if I may, if you may humour me for a minute there, lads. For me, Belgium, very disappointing. I have to agree with you there, Adam. But poorly coached twice now. You'd think they would have learnt from appointing Roberto Martinez, who was he's not very good. He's not very good, let's be honest. And
No, he's
you're
not.
quite familiar with him, Adam, for the club side you support.
Absolutely.
Where he had one glorious year off the back of, quite funnily enough, Romelu Lukaku, who he now has, who came into camp overweight. I think you've got that, and then you've got the egos in this side. De Bruyne and Courtois don't get along, and there's a fair few other lads that might not have the togetherness that a team needs. Probably a little bit of got ilks of Dutch sides gone by in years gone by, and then I think the other factor is you have this sort of really old generation of players like Courtois, De Bruyne, all these sort of like 32 to 34, 35-year-olds. And then you've got a young crop of players that are sort of 18 to 21, but nothing in between. And that's a real problem for any football side in the world for me. So I think that's where Belgium's problems are. As for Egypt, I guess, they're powered by one man, aren't they? Mo Salah and Omar Mamouche as well, a little bit. So, it's not particularly the strongest. The Kiwis we're quite familiar with, but yeah, Iran are certainly the joker in the pack, if you like, even though we're obviously from the same confederation. They're probably the most dangerous in terms of the banana peel sort of game in my eyes. But, Scott, I think you probably wanna add to that?
I'll just quickly, I would very much hasten to say that Egypt are a one-player team because Marmoush is probably the more dangerous player at this point in time compared to Mo Salah. If you focus on him too much, it might be a concern. I will say I do agree. I think Belgium are the more well-rounded and best of the teams that we could end up playing. So if you are looking for the more difficult opponent, it would be the Belgians. And I know what you say about the friction between Courtois and De Bruyne, and they have a bit of a Croatia feel to me this side, where it feels like it's a little bit of a last roll of the dice with this golden generation, although they have a bit more of a younger generation coming through. But for people like Courtois, Alex Witsel, De Bruyne, Tielemans, Lukaku, Trossard, this is really the last opportunity. They have gone close a couple of times. So I wonder, we said this about Croatia as well. I wonder if at some point these aging sides will actually start to run out of gas. And the fact that they've got a week off probably means it won't be this game here in the round of 32. So if he had that, who I would prefer not to play, it's probably the Belgians on that regard. But I don't fear any of them.
But
Yeah.
also as well, also as well, he talked about the younger generation. They do have Jeremy Doku. They do have Trossard as well from Arsenal. So there are some good players. But again, it's where they get that balance right. Because with that said, there's Courtois, there's De Bruyne, there's Lukaku as well, which is the older generation, the so-called golden generation. So I think there's a bit of identity cross as well. Just while you guys were talking, I was just not so I didn't look completely foolish about not knowing my Iranian players. They've actually only got three players that actually play outside of, I guess, of West Asia. We'll say mostly our local base. Obviously, they're Mehdi Taremi, the striker, plays for Olympiacos, as well as Dennis Eckert. That's a really Iranian name. He plays for Standard Liège. So I think they've got one other player. What's his name? Jahan Bakar as well, who plays for Dender. So only three sort of overseas based players as well. So again, that read into what you like. I'd say, I guess that, again, for a lot of the Euro snobs, you'd probably be eliminating that very quickly because they don't have players playing in the Champions League or wherever. So, but they're
Who did you
again,
say is
we'll
not
see.
Iranian with the name?
Dennis Eckert.
That's as Iranian as Pedro Miguel and Ed Milson is for Qatar the other day.
Oh yeah,
Naturalization.
naturalization work.
Although we really can't talk when we've got a Harry Sutar out there with a nice British accent as our captain.
Very true. Yeah, very, very, very true. That is the modern game of football, isn't it?
Yeah.
The international flavour. Now, one more point I wanted to round out with, I guess I might throw to you again, Scott, first. This sort of third place qualification, do you think it's added an extra level of jeopardy to the last round games?
I think it's moved the jeopardy down. It's taken it from the top two to second and third in the group because that's where the jeopardy is now, and it certainly has added something to it where the teams who are in third spot have something to really play for and strive for. And look, we can have our opinions on if the World Cup has got too many teams or not, but it is very interesting when you've got teams on 3 points with a -3 goal difference like Scotland, and we're basically saying that they are essentially going to be on the plane home because it's added real jeopardy. One win is not going to be enough in this situation. I mean, Paraguay got 4 points and they're not mathematically through yet. They're all but through, but not 100% yet. So it's added some intrigue to these third group games where occasionally you used to get these groups where two teams won the first games and that was essentially it. And then there was a dead rubber in the third game. And now there really haven't been any dead rubbers at all, apart from the US against Turkey today. I don't think any other game has been completely irrelevant in terms of having neither side with a chance of getting through. So it has kept sides alive more often and it has made things a little bit more nervy. And I have to say, I'm very glad that as Australians, we have to not have to worry about that for 1 minute for the next 2 days, because we were talking about this before we started recording and the mathematical equations of who's going to finish where based on what. It certainly is confusing. I'm glad we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, well, funny you mention. I actually ran into James on my way to the South Bank live site today, and I think his words were, and shout out to James, of course, former
Mm.
Brisbane Football Review pundit, I guess, or host, if you like, with these two fine gentlemen.
The host
The f the
emeritus, yes.
the host, yeah, and I think his words were he got an ice cream headache, trying to work out the equation if
Yeah,
Australia lost today, so,
he's
um,
tried that line out a few times.
yeah, there you go, so it's a James special, that one, but yeah, I think it's, yes, you're very much right. So we don't have to worry about that. We can sleep easily, and we get a couple of extra days rest, which is even better, particularly if there's a couple of injuries floating about like there are. But for you, Adam, I guess what are your thoughts on this additional third place qualification?
Look, I just want to sort of move a bit tangentially, sort of away from that, but it is a related point, and that is that I've been reading a lot of discourse about as well the head-to-head being the first tiebreaker, and with that said, I think this is been caused simply because of the third teams. I think that if we went out on straight out like it used to be when it was really a straight top two, there was really no best thirds or whatever. Yeah, then it made sense to be just goal difference. But I think with the head to head, I do think that it does at least eliminate the possibility of contrived results. I mean, where teams are nailing and scoring 8, 9 goals to do that. I think by having a head to head, it also allows FIFA and the local organising committee to already lock in pretty much where teams are going straight away, especially this is a very, very logistically large area. And I think at least as well with the USA, even though they did finish first, Mexico finishing first wrapped up very easily. We knew their path right through pretty much to the semi-finals anyway. But I think the great thing is because of this, we're not still wondering, oh, is Australia going to Dallas? Are they going to Kansas? Are they going to Boston? Are they going to Canada or Mexico? We know, and the path was always there. Once the US had qualified first, then you knew, okay, it's either going to be Dallas or we go through the lottery in the third place, and we may end up somewhere Atlanta. I think you and I, Scott, were discussing the permutations before today about that. So look, I have no problems with the head to head. If you don't like the head to head, then there's one or two choices, and that's we either reduce down 32 teams again, like hell in this FIFA era, or you go up to 64 teams where it's even numbers as well. And I've even heard people complain about, oh, there's way too many groups, that they're just idiots. So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, no, look, I don't mind it. I really think that this third place playoff in this situation, I think it's good. I think it gets some excitement.
10 seconds on the head to head. I like it, Alex, because it prioritizes winning. You're not going to the World Cup trying to get points to get out of the group. You need to win games, and I like that. It encourages teams to be bold and win games. And every team who's getting out of the group is winning at least one game. And for some, they'll win a game and not get through. So I like the fact it prioritizes winning.
Yeah, I have to agree. You have to give FIFA props when they do get it right, which is pretty rare these days, to be honest. And
Mhm.
let's give them a wrap for this one. But everything else, I
Are
mean,
they
we
getting
can go and get
sponsors for
stuff.
this praise? Because I don't get sponsored for hydration breaks allegedly.
Yeah, yeah. So I can't really disclose. I've had to sign an NDA as
Praise
to what
mayonnaise.
I'm
There you
getting
go.
paid. Yeah. Have I got anything to hold up in terms of advertising? No, luckily it's only an audio format. This podcast. Anyway. All right, gentlemen. Look, any closing thoughts? I guess we get to look forward to a Socceroos knockout game at 4 a.m. next Saturday morning. So make sure you set your alarm clocks, and we'll be back here to do it all again. But Scott, any final thoughts from you?
No, we should. One last thing is we shouldn't lose sight of the context of this. It is the third time Australia have got out of the group in the World Cup, and the first time we have done this back to back. So, well, we are saying it wasn't the most enthralling of games today against Paraguay. To get through, it is a significant achievement. So I know that it is the second time back to back, and we are getting a little bit used to it, but we shouldn't fully write off how important it is and the magnitude of the accomplishment to get out of this group, particularly given the quality of the group. It was a very even group, a very decent group in terms of the opposition. So to get through, it is still a massive accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. And we really need to think about that and praise these lads. It's that game, particularly against the USA, was rather deflating to lose away. I mean, it was only a 2-0 loss, and we showed better, but considering the age of this squad, I think it's the youngest Socceroos squad that's been taken to a World Cup, so it could have easily deflated them. So, very much props to the coaching staff and the players themselves for bouncing back, I guess. And Adam, any last thoughts from you?
Look, I just think as well the financial sort of side of things as well. Football Australia do collect $16 million now for the Socceroos qualifying for the group stage. That goes up to $21 million should they be successful in Dallas next Friday their time, next Saturday morning our time. So again, there's also a financial sort of gain from that. But I think more importantly, I think just I think we'll just go and enjoy it. I think as soccer fans, as Scott said, I agree. It's a sense of achievement. To be in the last 32 countries in the world is holding up to where we are in our world ranking. So, but I also think that there is potential that we could go even further, and around a 16 berth, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would indeed. It would just sum up the hard work that Tony Popovich has done since he took over when we were in a very precarious situation. Let's not forget that either. So, and rebuilt this side over the past 12 months with all of the friendlies that we've had because we qualified early. So, there's a lot of positives to think about here. We've got a really exciting generation of players coming through. And I think, as we've mentioned many times, both on air and off air, a number of them are on the precipice of some very big moves. I think we can all agree on that. One final thing, Adam, I'll get you to plug the Brisbane Football Review one more time before we leave.
Yeah, if you find us on Facebook at the Raw Review of Brisbane Football Review, Instagram and Threads at Brisbane Football Review, Twix at BNE Football, drop us an email, brisbanefootballreview@gmail.com, and you can find us on all good podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Adam. Really appreciate it. Same to you, Scott.
Pleasure as always.
Absolutely great to see you. Talk to you again next week after hopefully a Socceroos win in the round of 32.
Cross everything. It should be very exciting. That is it for this week for the Aussie Football Review and Brisbane Football Review podcast for this week. Catch us next week when we wrap up the round of 32 game for the Socceroos. Until then, enjoy your World Cup football.